We're live, Mr. Mayor.
All right. Welcome back. I feel like we were just here a few hours ago. So I call to order the May 28th, 2026 adjourned regular meeting of the City Council at 6:06 p.m. Oh. Will Kathy Dunbavin please lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance?
To the flag of the United States of America, and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. Madam City Clerk, can we have roll call, please?
Yes, Councilmember Seaman.
Here.
Councilmember Francois.
Here.
Councilmember Jackson.
Here.
Mayor Pro Tem Keegan.
Here.
Mayor DeToy.
Here.
We have a quorum.
Thank you. Now I'll take us to public comment. I do have a question for the city attorney. I don't see, we still take public comment on the study session topic, correct?
Yes.
Okay, perfect. I just want to make sure, because sometimes in study sessions, it slates public comment afterwards, so I just want to make sure that there's two opportunities tonight. So the first opportunity for public comment, Madam City Clerk.
Yes, this is a time for members of the public to address the City Council on any items within the council's jurisdiction. The public is invited to attend and provide public comment. Public comments are limited to 3 minutes per speaker from those present in City Council chambers and via the remote participation options listed on the agenda. This time allotment may be modified due to time constraints at the discretion of the mayor or City Council. Speakers with comments regarding city management or departmental operations are encouraged to submit those comments directly to the city manager. With that, the first speaker is
Elka W.
Okay, I guess I'm starting things off here. Good evening, Mayor and council members. I live on Monterey Boulevard and strongly oppose installing parking meters there and on Manhattan Avenue. Monterey Boulevard is not a revenue opportunity, it's a neighborhood. It's definitely not a commercial zone, no businesses there, just homes. Parking meters will increase traffic, devalue existing parking permits, and permanently change the character of these streets. I don't know anyone who wants a parking meter outside their front door. They're just ugly. In your recent survey, residents said they wanted to protect their quality of life. Yet this proposal does the exact opposite. Once you start monetizing residential streets, it doesn't stop. Today it's Monterey, tomorrow it could be your street. Thank you.
I did not receive any more speaker cards, and I do not see any hands raised at this time.
Well, I know on my notes it says that, you can only speak on general public comment, but I'll look to my colleagues to see if anyone has initial thoughts before just looking at the staff report, so to speak twice since, there's only a few of us here on the actual presentation, before the presentation. No? Good? All right. No one online? All right, we'll close public comment.
I'm sorry, there's one hand raised.
Sorry.
Dan, your 3 minutes will start when you begin speaking.
we're having some issues.
I'm sorry, Dan, give us 1 minute.
Yeah.
Hi, can you guys hear me?
We can hear you now. Sorry about that.
Oh, no problem. I just apologize for asking this because I joined a few minutes late, but is this the right forum to speak in support of a proposed crosswalk project, or should that be addressed at a later time this evening?
You can speak now or later.
Oh, perfect. Well, I'll speak briefly here. And I've been a 38-year resident of Hermosa Beach, currently live on 25th and Ardmore. And I just wanted to quickly speak in support of the proposed crosswalk project that's been a couple years in the making at the intersection of 25th and Ardmore. It's one of the longest stretches on on Ardmore without any sort of safe crossing. You may recall a few years ago there was actually a child that was almost killed in a car accident about a half a block away, just off the corner. As I understand it, it's a planned improvement for later this fall, and I understand that it's going to be happening, but I just wanted to commend all of you on the council for championing the project and looking out for safety. And that I just wanted to speak in support of it. So thank you so much.
Thank you, Sam. Any other hands raised?
No other hands raised.
All right, we'll close public comment and bring it back to the city manager for opening remarks.
Thank you, Your Honor. I'm going to actually skip the opening remarks tonight. I feel like I've been the voice of doom and gloom for the last four meetings. So I'm going to turn that honor over to Joe and weigh in along the way. But we've certainly gone over this presentation. Hermosa Beach is not unique in its challenges with its CIP, as is the case with a lot of cities our size and even larger ones. We don't necessarily have a dedicated revenue stream for our CIP projects. We put them together through a lot of different sources, including state and county funds, which are often restricted and have strings attached to them, some federal funds, and also we rely heavily on surpluses year to year, which of course we are challenged with this year and years going forward. So I said I was not going to provide any remarks, but I just did. So I will turn over to Joe now. Thanks, Joe.
Thank you, Steve, and good evening, Mayor Pro Tem, Council. Pleased to be here tonight for our annual CIP study session. So just a brief overview of what we have for you tonight. This is really talking about the upcoming fiscal year 26-27 and for in-depth discussion and review of all of our CIP project scopes, taking a look at funding allocations, and also aligning staff capacity with overall priorities across the CIP and really looking at what can be delivered in the upcoming fiscal year versus those things that might need to be deferred beyond. Overall, the theme that I'm going to continue to share through the night is funding is constrained, as City Manager had noted, but also staffing is constrained. So our ability to deliver projects is a function of both funding and staffing capacity to deliver those projects forward. Also, many projects over the years have been deferred. We have many that have lived on the CIP for years, and what I'm going to say is that deferring these is really no longer a sustainable plan. Many are reaching what I'll say is the end of the road. There are several projects what I'll call are reaching a critical state, either for safety, continued operation, or to meet other regulatory requirements. And so there's a number of projects that will remain hot through the year that we are recommending that we continued emphasis on moving along. Also, in our CIP, each year when we look at the funding, it's very typical that we do not fully fund any of the projects on them. Often, for example, we might only have limited money to fund a planning or a design phase, but we don't have enough funding to actually fund the construction. And it may be that, one, the money is not available, or that construction may not even occur in the current fiscal year. And with limited funds, we can't tie up those funds each fiscal year, and so some careful planning and allocation has to happen. Tonight's discussion is part of a larger overall budget discussion, and to help frame that a little bit more, I'm joined here with Administrative Services Director Brandon Walker, who's going to give a couple slides on the overall fiscal environment.
Thanks, Joe. Good evening, Mayor and Council. So before we talk about specific projects, I think it's important to understand the financial environment shaping the CIP that Joe and his team are representing tonight. So historically, the city's capital program has been funded with one-time resources ranging from year-end general fund surpluses, ARPA, federal funds after COVID, carry-forwards, and vacancy savings. So those funding sources have helped us make significant progress on infrastructure over these past several years, but they were never permanent funding sources. So today, these sources have largely been exhausted, and we do not project a surplus to replenish the CIP fund this year or projected for next fiscal year. And at the same time, no dedicated ongoing funding support from the general fund exists currently to replace this funding stream. So this comes as the city is also addressing a structural operating budget challenge that the team has worked hard the last few budget meetings to fill, but which means that there's no one-time funds that were previously dedicated to infrastructure available to support ongoing capital needs, as you'll see in Joe's presentation. So the end result is that the funding model that has sustained CIP for many of the most recent years has effectively come to the end. The question before us today is, with no longer having this access to surplus funds, how do we preserve and maintain infrastructure the residents depend on when these resources, these surplus resources, are no longer available? So this challenge becomes even more significant when we look at the city's long-term infrastructure needs, which Joe will obviously go over tonight also. So residents continually tell us their priorities are maintaining the quality of life they enjoy today: safe streets, reliable infrastructure, well-maintained parks, facilities, and essential public services. Many of the projects before us are not discretionary enhancements. They're critical infrastructure investments such as the city yard, discussion about the municipal pier, stormwater compliance projects, pavement preservation, and facility rehabilitation. Again, as Joe mentioned, several of these projects only remain partially funded or completely unfunded. So with grants, as Steve mentioned, grants and outside funding sources remain important tools. They're often limited to specific purposes. They're highly competitive and cannot be relied on to meet many of the city's core, I will call, meat and potato needs of street and sidewalks. So the consequence has been a continued underinvestment, which is pretty straightforward. When you underinvest, what happens? Projects get delayed, costs increase, deferred maintenance grows, and infrastructure conditions deteriorate. So in closing, talking about the financial picture, this is why tonight's CIP discussion is fundamentally tied to our city's broader budget conversation. The issue here is not about funding new amenities or expanding services. It's about sustaining the infrastructure and community assets that residents currently already value and expect, and then working to identify a long-term funding strategy that allows us to keep up with this responsibility.
Thank you, Brandon. So as I start to get into the slide site, there's a few key challenges that I'd like to highlight as we look at the ability to deliver the CIP over the coming year and into the future. Number one, our workload, as I described, we are completely full as a Public Works Department for the next 2 years. As you'll see in your packet, we have a schedule that's attached that shows staff capacity versus the demand to deliver the CIP as currently proposed, and we are at a complete full state with little ability to take on any additional work. And also, while we do this, there are a number of projects that are that critical state that are very high priority that will continue to require an emphasis to ensure that they advance in a timely fashion, as well as all the other additional needs that are outlined in the CIP. Two, one thing I want to point out is that Public Works is both engineering and operations and maintenance. We are one team. And our O&M team works hand in hand with our engineers to plan, design, and deliver all CIP projects. Our O&M team is equally as busy as our engineering team. They address over 4,000 work orders a year. That's 10 to 12 per calendar day. It's a lot. They help support special events, but they're working hand in hand with our engineering team on all CIP delivery. And so any impact to their workload pulls away their ability and the department's ability to deliver CIPs. So we are interconnected. Number three, any plan that we propose tonight is a tentative plan, and we remain highly sensitive to any staffing levels. Currently, engineering is down 1 engineer. That takes out 10% of project management capacity. We work quickly to try to fill these roles, but we remain in a very competitive environment for recruitment of civil engineers, and that is ongoing through the private and public sectors. Where possible, we bring in augmentation staff, but that's not seamless. And we also have to be able to spend funds to bring in those resources in a responsible and efficient way. 4, there's a lot on our plate in the next year. A few things that I want to highlight are the City Yard project. It is already requiring a significant staff effort, and to get this project over the finish line once and for all will require engineering, our O&M team, to work closely with the architectural team and the team that we're assembling so that we can really understand what the needs are for this project so that they can understand the operations and then we can help advance this project. It's not as easy as bringing in a designer. They need input from the operations team so they can understand how to move it. So this will require a continued emphasis and workload dedication. Also, a lot of projects that we have, a lot of the funding that is tied to grant-funded schedules, which can be very unpredictable. So while we try to provide estimates of when things can be done, it's often out of our control and often up to the granting agencies on what needs they have, administrative paperwork, and their responsiveness to our requests as we try to move grant-funded projects. So those are our guesstimates, and we have some new grant-funded projects that may come, and like I said, we're going to be somewhat at their mercy on what those schedules would be. We also have several large contract negotiations that Public Works will be involved with in the coming year. Our LA County contracts are expiring. Public Works will be heavily involved with the beach maintenance agreement. There are also several other maintenance agreements that are coming due where our team will have to review in much more detail scopes of work, solicit proposals, and get new contractors on board. These include our janitorial services, tree maintenance services, landscape services, and sewer services, and that's just what comes to top of mind this year, but there are several large ones coming this year. We're also working on modernizing our processes with community development. We're working on online permitting rollout. This has been a tremendous effort across the two divisions to try to enhance and streamline the ability for folks to apply for permits and online payment. This is something that we're hoping to roll out in the coming year, and this will require continued dedication to advance this towards this new technological rollout. We also have a lot of big outside agency projects, which there are many that we know of, but we often don't know about them until they come, and those are outside of our control. Some big ones that I'll call out are LA County Sanitation Districts started a major sewer lining project. That is already underway. It's going to continue across the city over the coming year and will require ongoing dedicated engineering oversight and planning to ensure traffic control and construction oversight. Caltrans has a major resurfacing project. They will be resurfacing PCH finally, knock on wood, we believe starting in January. They've already started near the Santa Monica city limit. They're working their way south. We expect that they may be here by January with more information to come. That will require ongoing work. We also have another major Cal Water project, and there could be others that come. When new special events come that are outside our regular schedule, those do pull in O&M engineering to help plan those events. It's usually an all-hands effort to work across departments and help plan what's needed, and then help ultimately support those events should they come to fruition. While I wish we could plan this, we can't plan natural disasters and emergency, but we are emergency responders. So when things happen, everything gets dropped. And our team is a responder. It has to get called into action. Any other new non-CIP special projects or ones that might start up this year could also divert attention. We recently signed an MOU with Hermosa Beach Little League. The schedule for that is TBD for when they're able to complete their fundraising and advance their design, but we will be here to help them when that happens. There's also discussion about a future dog park. And then any other unplanned work that we're not aware of when we set the schedule can certainly impact that workload or the delivery of the CIP as we're showing you tonight. Some highlights of things, and so while we are busy, I am really proud to say our team has been working incredibly hard to knock out backlog and deliver long delayed projects. We are on track to complete 11 projects this year. We have another 3 that are under construction and will be reaching substantial completion, at least close to the end of the fiscal year, but will remain on the CIP books through next fiscal year because there'll still be work ongoing, including closeout. And we have 2 projects that are advertised for construction, so they're in the bidding and award phase. We also completed, in addition to the projects that are done, a major study of our pier, taking a look, comprehensive structural assessment and a cost-benefit analysis that we brought to you in March, and there's more work to be done on that in the coming months. In addition to things that are done, we continue to work on planning and design of several other projects, and we'll highlight some of the ones that have continued to move through the year. All amidst this work, we've also responded to a number of unplanned emergencies that happen and will continue to happen. The photo on the left was an emergency sinkhole on Valley Drive where we had to work quickly to resolve that issue. We did a structural inspection of the Vetter windmill at Greenwood Park this year that led to an emergency removal of the windmill assembly. We removed 26 trees out of our parks to address safety concerns in Valley Park and Valley Drive. We had an emergency full closure of Lot C this year that we had to tackle and address to sort out structural concerns and complete that project. And we even had a partial closure at the end of the pier several months ago as we had to do an additional emergency inspection at the end of the pier. All said, this chart highlights project completion by fiscal year. There was a point in time where the city was only completing about 4 projects a year. We have continued to triple that rate since fiscal year 2023. There are 8 projects that are done. And some of these, the first thing I'm going to point out is that while construction may have been substantially complete in the prior fiscal year, some of these projects did remain on the books and closeout continued into the new fiscal year. Often closeout continues after you're done seeing construction in the field. I won't go through these in detail, but there were 8 that are fully complete and done with closeout. We have another 3 projects that are substantially complete and in closeout phase and will also come off the CIP book for this year. And then there are 3 additional projects that are nearing substantial completion or in the closeout phase, but will continue on through the next fiscal year. Some other highlights, and I won't go into a lot of detail in each one, but some things that I'll point out. We have 2 major paving projects underway. We have a slurry seal project. The city has not done this in a long time, and we're happy to be able to bring this back as a low-cost way to preserve our roadways and extend some life of the asphalt treatment. That's in bidding an award. We're hoping to bring an award to the next council meeting or the one after. We're also working on a very large paving project that's combined with city sidewalk. There was a caller that called in tonight asking about crosswalks on Ardmore. This project also incorporates 2 new crossings on Ardmore, one at 25th Street and one at Longfellow. And this is following numerous requests and complaints from that neighborhood for improving crossing conditions across Ardmore, and that would be integrated into this project, including the addition of rectangular rapid flashing beacons at those crosswalks. All said, that paving project's looking to pave about 2.5 miles of roadway. Our Greenwich Village project is undergrounding, is finally well under construction. We've been working really closely with the Real-Time Crime Center, federal grant. One thing I'll highlight about grants, and I've noted before, is we have to adhere to their timelines. So we often have deadlines, but there are also a lot of rules and regulations to follow. I think the challenge with a federal grant is we've experienced I believe, a 3-month federal government shutdown that delayed any response from their administrative staff. And now we are navigating through some complex Buy America requirements that continue to take dedicated time to advance that project. Our playground equipment project we are bidding to bring a contractor in. We purchase equipment for new playground equipment in Valley Park, Seaview Park, and also some upgrades at South Park. And we've made some advancements in our signage project as well. And we are in the early stages of multi-space meter deployment on Pier Avenue and in Lot D that would remove the meter heads and consolidate that into a multi-space meter. Some projects that I'll provide a little bit more detail on: the city yard. Team has been very dedicated in advancing this project. Following council direction, we brought our owner's rep in January. We started advancing the architectural programming in April. And just this past Tuesday, council awarded the contract for the SEQA environmental assessment services that are required to advance that project. The goal is to continue to work with our architectural team, bring something back to City Council late summer, early fall, so that we have more information about the scope and size of this project. What is really critical to evaluating the scope and doing the environmental testing is to really get a better handle on what the true cost of this project is. And what I will emphasize is, while it remains underfunded, the $20 million estimate is a very rough order of magnitude cost estimate and not based on any square footage estimate. This is really rough. And so what we are trying to do is get more detailed assessment of what is needed, what buildings can stay, what needs to be removed, what remediation abatement needs to happen, so that we can work towards a more real cost estimate so that we can start to consider funding and financing for the project. Overall, I will emphasize that this facility has exceeded its useful life, and it is in growing urgency for renovation and replacement. Another project that is also growing in urgency is the community center windows. We have some very, very old windows that continue to be a work order problem. We have slats that fall out. Our team is regularly replacing them, gluing them in. They're in very poor condition. And it is a growing safety and security issue for the building. Right now, folks can push out slats. We often have to secure the slats to keep people from getting in the building after hours. So this is an ongoing issue. We worked with an architect to do an assessment for the needs for that building and also to take a look at a window treatment that would fit in with the historic context of the building and to get a better order of magnitude cost estimate. But this project does remain underfunded by about $2.5 million to replace all the many windows and doors in this building. Currently, we're only seeking design funding for the year so that we can continue to refine that number and likely come back the following fiscal year and seek additional funding at that time once we have a more refined number. Stormwater drywall project is another one that has been in the CIP for a number of years. And you may recall that there was a Greenbelt infiltration project several years ago that ultimately council asked staff to stop pursuing. There were some concerns in the neighborhood, but this is a mandated project to address water infiltration requirements. And even though that project stopped, we do need to find a replacement project. We are evaluating a couple different feasibility options, but we do believe this remains underfunded by about $4 million. In March, we brought a contract to retain Geosyntec, who's doing an updated feasibility assessment, and we're working in coordination with Redondo Beach to submit a joint application to hopefully obtain some Measure W funding to help advance this project. But if we're unsuccessful, we are recommending to have some funding in there so that the city can continue to advance the project with or without the grant funds so that we can try to reach compliance. Otherwise, the city would be subject to potential fines. CIP 143 is the PCH Aviation Mobility Project. This has been on the CIP for many years, I believe more than a decade it has existed in the CIP. Over the last few years, we've reached out to the South Bay COG to try to obtain additional funding in partnership with Metro. Currently, the project is administered through Metro. And what this does is trying to advance it to the next stage. And this dates back at least to 2014 or beyond. And this is taking a look at Pacific Coast Highway from Artesia all the way to Hondo and Aviation Boulevard from Prospect to Artesia. And this is really a complete street upgrade, taking a look at potentially removing utility poles on PCH, improving sidewalk conditions, beautification enhancements on PCH, and then also complete street elements, enhanced bike crossings, enhanced pedestrian crossings, and other intersection safety improvements. And it would build off the work that was done in 2014 and 2015. Currently, we are pending about almost $5 million in funds from Metro, through Metro, but this is subject to an agreement with Metro that we would likely bring back to City Council in the coming months before this advances. But this would be a significant undertaking and would largely remain unfunded going to the future. But we do expect that the environmental process could take a couple years to complete, particularly as this is a Caltrans facility. We're also pursuing funding for the Hermosa Avenue Safety Improvement Project, and this would look at safety improvements along Hermosa Avenue from Hondo to 25th Street with targeted improvements at 5 intersections. Also evaluating the addition of and feasibility of a bicycle lane in accordance with the bike master plan and the general plan on Hermosa Avenue where it doesn't exist today. And then also taking a more detailed look at parking along the center median with the possibility of daylighting parking to enhance safety at crosswalks, but also taking a look at reconfiguration that may allow us to actually create some parking where there's some excess red zones and or through the closure of medians that may be underutilized or not needed along the center median. As I noted, and you may remember from March, we completed a very detailed structural inspection. CIP 623 really had 2 parts. It was not only that large inspection, but more urgently, we are working on finalizing the design for the highest priority repairs. This would be deck panel replacement and repair to about more than a dozen panels in the structure. We are anticipating to receive Coastal Commission approval next month and advertise shortly thereafter with the goal of trying to get into construction as soon as September or October so that we can try to avoid the rainy, wintry months and also avoid the busiest season on the pier. It is critical that we complete these repairs by 2027. In the meantime, we're also looking at the long-term needs. We could only fund the highest priority, and there remains another $4 million of improvements that will be needed to be completed by 2030. There would have to either be a future project for consideration by City Council, or we could consider other longer-term options. Ultimately, the assessment, our recommendation was a potential replacement that could save the city over $100 million over the next 45 years in life cycle costs. And really the challenge here is that some decision will need to be made by the end of the calendar year, whether we want to go forward with not fixing it or another plan for larger repairs. Otherwise, we would have to fund that next round of repairs in the next fiscal year 27-28, so that they can be completed by 2030. And the challenge with this is that there's a very long lead time for all the permitting and design that has to happen. For whether we do a repair can easily take 2 or 3 years, whereas a replacement could take 8 years or longer. And that's all subject to funding. Council directed us to return to Public Works Commission to workshop this further, which we're hoping to do later this year, and then bring that back to City Council. Each year, we take an opportunity to take a look at the CIP as a whole. Any new funding needs, any critical safety things that have to advance, or any other regulatory requirements that dictate things that have to happen on a certain timeline. And then we look at how much money we have versus what's that staff capacity to deliver the projects in the next year and what can actually be accomplished. We also take the opportunity to refine our scopes and estimates. In your agenda packet tonight, we tried to provide as much detail as we could. There's a more expanded project sheet than we've done in prior years, detailing scopes of work, limits of work, so that we can continue to collect input on those scopes. In each year, there is refinement. If we have a project that's in preliminary design or conceptual, often those scopes do get refined year to year as we get further through the design process. The other thing that we do is not only what can be funded, we take a look at the sequencing and what can be delivered through the year. For example, if there's 24 projects in the CIP, they can't all be under construction at the same time. And so we are juggling projects at different stages and also taking a look at when projects can be constructed. Is there time sensitivity or location sensitivity to when they can fall in construction, which may also dictate the schedule that we look at. And as I continue to note, there are a number of projects that remain underfunded, and what we do is we try to fund critical phases each year to continue to advance projects one by one, but many remain underfunded, and there's also several that are completely unfunded. This year, we do not want to increase the number of projects as we continue to address backlog, and given limited funding availability, we are carrying over 22 projects. We are adding 2, but we are proposing to take 2 projects off the list so that we have a net no change in the overall CIP. We are proposing to move to the defunded list the comprehensive downtown lighting study, which staff has not been able to get to due to other higher priorities, as well as the tsunami siren project, which I'm going to talk about in a couple more slides in a little bit more detail. The 2 new projects that we are recommending is a new roof on this building, City Hall and Police. It is in bad shape. We've done some detailed assessments of the roof, and it does need a new roof. The lawn bowling facility also remains a city facility and is in dire need of a new roof each year. Our team has been going out and placing a tarp on the flat roof structure. The city also owns a maintenance shed that is attached to the lawn bowling facility. This roof would re-roof both of those buildings, which are interconnected. Some notable changes in the funding. There is a detailed funding chart in your packet that shows where we sprinkle the available funds. Each year, we do have to move a lot of funds around. Often, we have a lot of restricted funds. There's not a lot of general funds. And those restricted funds can only be spent on certain types of projects. And so each year, there is a lot of movement. We have to shift funds around, and there was very limited new money available this year. Currently, only $4.7 million in new funding, and none of that was general fund. Most of it is restricted funds. There was no new general fund dollars added to the CIP in our current proposal for next year. The projects that received the most funding out of the new funding that was added, we increased our annual SOAR project. This project is going to begin design in the coming months, and we've also supplemented with additional paving funds so that we can do expanded trench restoration beyond just the small trench over the SOAR line at few key locations that need both SOAR and paving. We've added over another million to our current CIP 106 so that we could add additional roadway segments, bringing it up to 2.5 miles of roadway resurfacing as part of that project. We've added another $1 million in the city yard renovation project, which remains underfunded, so that project can continue to move forward. Dry wells project, as I mentioned, we've added funds in there as a contingency. Should we be unsuccessful in getting highly competitive Measure W grant funds, our recommendation is that we be ready to advance design and construction as quickly as we can so that the city can get into compliance with our stormwater requirements. I won't go through details of the others, but there's some smaller additions to the other projects listed on the slide. And in this chart, what I'd like to emphasize is this is our CIP budget by fiscal year. And I think what I'm going to show here is that over time, our CIP budget has grown. And a lot of this is a function of more projects getting added than what was completed. And so this is good and bad. That current year, we show a notable drop. And so the good news is it shows that we're completing a lot of projects. We've tripled our rate. We've added less projects, and we're finishing them faster than we're adding them. But the problem is that we're also spending at a rate quicker than what's replenishing. Our spend rate on CIP delivery is about $8 to $12 million, but this year we only had about $4.7 million to replenish. This pie chart shows where those new funds come from this year. About $18 million were carryover funds. So these are funds that were already allocated in the current fiscal year that will get rolled over, but there's only $4.72 million in new funds, as I noted before, largely restricted funding sources with no general fund dollar. As we look at the projects, as I noted, it's not just about how much money is available and what needs to be done. There's a number of factors that we look at as we look at the sequencing. And so as we look at priorities and what has to happen, we have to look at whether there's any urgent safety needs or deferred maintenance needs. The restricted funding that we do have often has spending deadlines, and we have to be mindful of when that money has to be spent. The same goes with grant funds. We have to have those schedules locked in, or we lose or there's risk of potential lapse of those funds or other regulatory requirements that may dictate when something has to be done, for example, the stormwater drywall project, or other council priorities that may happen along the way. But one of the big things that we look at, and in your packet, we provide a detailed estimated schedule that compares staff capacity versus how much demand it will take on the staff to complete those projects. And we have a legend in there that shows by different color code the different phases of the project that we spend a fair amount of time planning of how these projects will roll out through the year. And so the different color codes are up there. And there's also a red box on many of them which we're showing are really these fixed schedule projects. And the reason being is that these are the ones that we flagged that are either tied to grant funds, are currently under contract, or a potential safety concern that would dictate that they really can't move in the schedule. And we have a growing number of these fixed schedule projects, as we really have many projects that are just needs to have and not nice to haves. The schedule here that I was talking about a little bit further, I have it broken into two pieces. The purple is the construction. And one thing that we carefully look at is how many projects are going to be under construction at one time, and when is that construction going to occur? This is a bit of an art, and like I said, there's a lot of factors that can change the schedule. This is our projection, and so things that may impact our workload can easily ripple through the schedule because we are at or over capacity. And so on the right-hand side, there's a total of how many hours it takes to deliver each of these projects. In the columns on the bottom sum up how much hours we need to manage these versus the staff capacity. What I'll point out is the bottom line. That's the difference between the demand and the capacity that we have, and there is very little availability. You'll see the red, which means we are oversubscribed that month. In the months that we're in black, we have a little bit of catch up, but overall, we are completely full for the next 2 years with no ability to take anything else on. And so when we plan this, we assume that our engineers will dedicate about 50% of their time to CIP delivery. And so any other non-CIP projects that are not planned for the year that come in directly pull engineers away from CIP delivery, and that can ripple through the schedule and cause delays across all projects. This is the second half of the chart. I'm more than happy to come back to anything later that you would like to look at. There are 4 matters that I'd really like to point out for a little bit of extra special attention for City Council. Number 1, there are 2 projects being recommended to be moved to the deferred and unfunded future list. First is the comprehensive downtown lighting study, which has remained underfunded. It has never been fully funded to be completed, and staff has not had the capacity to take this on. We are proposing to remove this and actually keep it on the deferred and unfunded list, but take it off the CIP to free up $142,000 of funds and instead replace it with 2 lower cost supplemental options that would be included as a budget proposal for the department for the upcoming fiscal year. So it would be replaced with 1 Palm Street string light installation. These are the center palms along Pier Avenue. In prior years, we've done it only during the holiday season. This would be a proposal to keep them up year-long with potentially color-changing lights in the center palms. It would likely be a recurring expense, as these lights generally don't last more than a year or 2, but I think we could probably, it wouldn't be a full $14,000 every year, but there would be some replacement and maintenance each year. The second component would be an LED streetlight conversion. Currently, the lights we have are obsolete. When those light bulbs go out on those poles, we have a very hard time finding replacement. There are LED retrofit kits that can be fabricated for these lights, and we are actually testing 3 of them out there in Pier Avenue right now. And so the goal here is there are 3 different things. 1, solve the issue of when lights go out, what do we replace them with? There will be some energy savings going to LED, but then also to help, the third would be to address some of the concerns about the brightness levels along the corridor. These LED lights actually have dimming units. The lights we have out there now do not. And so this would actually give us an ability to increase the brightness and adjust it. One thing that, and what we're doing right now is testing the lights, both for brightness, and we're going to be doing some tests and adjusting those levels. I think there's potential for making them brighter, but we're also, with the 3 units that are out there right now, and I have a map that shows you where they are. There is one in front of Stecca at 439 Pier Avenue. This is near the intersection of Cypress. This was installed about a month ago. If you go out, the coloring is a little bit more of a white light than the more yellow light that exists on Pier Avenue today. There are different warmthness levels of these lights, and so just today we installed 2 more, one in front of Rockefeller and Creme de la Crêpe, and also one at the corner of Cypress. And so we're trying 3 different color tones. This is not brightness, and we're going to test these over the coming months before a decision is made on which one ultimately gets installed, subject to council approval of that supplemental. The second project that we are recommending being moved to the deferred and unfunded list is the tsunami siren. This project has also remained on the CIP for several years and has been deferred for various reasons. What I want to highlight is that staff did obtain some partial funding through a FEMA grant. It's about $100,000 with a $25K match, so it's $75K of FEMA and $25K of city funds. However, this does not cover the full cost of the project. The grant that was applied for was for consideration of a tsunami siren at the community center, and it was always intended to be a secondary system to what we had anticipated LA County would have installed as the primary system on the beach, their Beal system. It's our understanding that the Beal system is long delayed, and this is largely underfunded, more in the order of magnitude of $400,000. So we are recommending that we defer this project, as the funding that we have is not sufficient to complete the project and would only be advancing a secondary system. We would recommend that staff continue to explore other grant opportunities for the primary system along our beach. Number two, there's one project that we have added to the deferred and unfunded future project list, the Vetter windmill. I mentioned earlier, I think it was around July or so, we completed a detailed structural inspection. The structure had not been looked at in some time, and this ultimately led to an emergency removal of the metal windmill assembly. That weighs about, I believe, 1,700 or 1,800 pounds, and there was a concern that it could potentially fall off the structure. Once it was removed, we've eliminated the safety hazard. However, the wooden base is in poor condition and does need to be replaced, along with the foundation. In the upper windmill assembly, which is mostly original parts, not entirely, would need to be completely refurbished to address some of the concerns and brought up to more safety levels. But all in all, this is in the order of magnitude of about $400,000 to $500,000, and this is after working with folks that specialize in windmill refurbishment and reconstruction. Number three, there are a number of projects that remain underfunded, and that's what I keep repeating through the night. We do what we can to fund critical stages as we advance them, but currently our current CIP of 24 projects plus the recurring projects like planning for continued paving, sidewalk improvements, and SOAR remain underfunded by almost $60 million. In addition, we have a growing list of unfunded projects in our 5-year. It's anywhere from 90 to 220 million. That now includes potential larger improvements to our pier structure. There's also a number of projects on our CIP that are reaching that critical state, and so we are funding pieces to keep them moving where funding allows. One thing that I will highlight is that staff has aggressively looked to secure grant fundings, but overall, grants cannot be relied as a reliable funding method to advance many of our projects. Unfortunately, many of the grant programs that are out there just simply do not align with the priority needs for deferred maintenance and operations that we have. And also, the ones that are out there remain highly competitive. Staff has applied for several over the last year, but due to high competition and limited funding going around, it's hard to come by those grant funds. Some of the ones that staff is recommending really continued emphasis on for funding in prioritization, workload-wise in our CIP is the city yard, number one. It is growing in poor condition, and I will say there's growing urgency to address the repair needs at that facility. This year we did not add a new paving project, but we're able to supplement the current paving project by another $1 million. But we will be making a recommendation to have another large paving project in FY27. Currently, we really need to be spending about $3.1 million in construction each year to maintain PCI levels, or pavement condition index. Community center windows, as I highlighted earlier, this is a growing problem. It is taking significant O&M staff resources to address work orders here. It's a growing safety and security concern, and we recommend continued emphasis in advancing that design so that we can refine the cost for that project. The pier, as I've highlighted earlier, we have to knock out a project this year. to address things that have to be done by 2027 to avoid potential closures, and the drywall project that I highlighted earlier to avoid potential fines. Final consideration here, number 4, is really any new special projects that come on pull us away from CIP delivery. We simply just have no capacity to take anything else on. So anything new that comes in may require a tough decision of what can wait, because everything can't continue if new things are added. Some things that were added this year, Little League, Dog Park, or potentially any other new special events that may come along the way, directly impact staff delivery. And so we would ask council to consider, when things are added, what else can wait in its place. Because our design review and oversight will really need to continue for all these additional things, even if it's not a project directly led by the city. So with that, I'm going to leave you with our recommended actions to take a look, provide feedback on the overall CIP. One thing that I didn't highlight earlier is that we did provide all this content in a very similar presentation at a joint commission meeting that was held on May 5 with the Parks and Recreation and the Public Works Commission. Ultimately, those commissions both approved staff recommendation that we have before you here tonight. And with that, that concludes my presentation.
Great. Thank you, Joe, Brandon, Steve, the whole city team for this report. I just want to start off by saying thank you for your 11 projects this year. And actually, I think it's a good thing that we're spending more money than we're putting in to a certain degree. We've been building it up for quite some time with the one-time funds and the staff vacancies and things like that. But to see these projects, spending the money and getting the money out the door is a testament to the hard work your team's been doing. So thank you for that. But also, we're also at an inflection point. So we have a large backlog of CIPs, and that's not an attack on anyone in this room, just the reality of, small city and finite resources. So go to questions. Ray?
Thank you, Joe. Thanks for all the hard work. It's always refreshing to see the number of projects that have been completed since the back to basics approach that you all started a couple years ago, and that's a testament to your efforts. So thank you to you and your team for all you do. Few questions with regard to some of the matters we discussed. With regard to the slurry sealing. Slurry sealing is less expensive than paving. Is that correct?
It's significantly less expensive, yes.
Okay, so in the south of town where they just redid all this, the permeable concrete and all that stuff, is that slurry sealing that they're doing? Do you know? Because we got, and the reason I'm asking, so they did the one side that looks great, and I think it's slurry sealing because they did it pretty fast, and then the other side doesn't look great. And so one of the issues we've had from the community is, hey, when anytime there's construction or a project on my street, I get this, racing strip down the middle, and then the rest of it doesn't look good. So is that, do you know if that's slurry sealing or is that just repaving that our contractors are doing down the south end of town?
Thank you, Councilmember Jackson. So probably a few questions in there. I think
Yes.
you may be referring to Monterey Boulevard, for example, where I
Yes.
think sanitation districts did some, they have to do regular paving. That's not slurry. So when we have utility projects, we have trench restoration requirements, typically at least the full lane. And so we have standard details, and that's generally all that we can ask for, unless it's a new road. If the road has been paved within the last 5 years, for example, it falls under our moratorium requirements, and then we can actually ask for expanded restoration from curb to curb, and we do so. For example, that's happening right now on Valley Drive. There's a gas company project digging in our new Valley Drive pavement. They will be required to restore it curb to curb. In terms of when slurry is used, it's typically used, it has to be, the road can't be in very poor condition. If it's in very poor condition, we're looking at a grind and overlay. You're actually going to slurry the roads that are in better condition so that we can extend those lives so they don't fall into the poor condition and over time we can save more money. And so it's something that hasn't been done in a long time. We have a pretty big slurry project coming, and it looks like it's on target for what we had hoped for. But that's something that we want to start integrating in to the CIP in the future beyond this project. Monterey itself, I believe, is slated for full grind and overlay. We did try to see if we could get that contractor to expand their limits on Monterey, but it was not a successful negotiation that would be favorable to the city, so I'll leave it at that. But we are looking at opportunities where we can try to clean things up. But sometimes, unfortunately, we are left with trenches, and over time, those colors will fade into the existing.
Yeah, I appreciate that. So I guess I appreciate you checking with the contractor on Monterey in particular, because this one side looks awesome, the other side not so awesome, and the south side of town has been neglected for years. So to the extent we can slurry and reseal, that would be awesome. You mentioned the string lightings versus the LED conversions. Now, is there any LED conversion on Baird Street that really has that dark crosswalk? Is there a light there? Because I think that needs to be a priority. And, you know, we all love the string lighting on the palm trees, but, you know, if it's, I'll get to that in a second, but yeah, we have to change those out because there are maintenance issues every couple of years. I think the lights keep going out, and I know it's a lot of time invested. But I guess the real question is there a LED conversion on that Baird Street crosswalk that is probably the darkest section on Pier?
So if the pole is on Pier Avenue, then it would be included. I think there are 28 light poles on Pier Avenue, but none of them extend into the side streets. So I can't recall if that light is, if it's at the crosswalk, it's on Pier Avenue, it would be included. Okay. What we are going to do is when we have these, we're actually going to test the brightness level and compare them against current standards, and then determine whether or not we need to increase the brightness. It may or may not resolve all the issues without additional infill poles, but we're hoping to get some additional brightness out of them and help enhance visibility at places like crosswalks and the sidewalk.
Excellent, thank you. And with regard to the lawn bowling center, I know that a few months ago we asked staff to come back or go to Parks and Rec to do a deep dive on who is responsible for managing and maintaining that property, as well as any relevant covenants. Is that, I think that's still in the queue, is that correct?
It's still in negotiations, Councilmember.
Discuss what?
Well, I thought Parks and Rec was.
Parks and Rec is leading that, yes.
Right, okay. So they're going to have public discussions on who owns, who does what, who's responsible for the maintenance, and any respective covenants on that property.
They're talking about that now, and it would come back to council for approval.
Okay. I think the ask was for Parks and Rec to take a look at the whole lawn bowling center in terms of who owns what, who's responsible for the maintenance, covenants, et cetera. Okay.
You want to go to the next question?
Yeah, I'll go to the next question. Thank you. So we have no money. So if we continue to have no money, there's no additional revenue stream. How are we going to fund any of these projects? I guess is my real big question, because you said we're full for 2 years. Certainly appreciate that. Your list is growing, and I don't see your list ever really being reduced significantly based on the needs of the city. We're at a critical state. We've been in this state for years now. We're trying to address the revenue piece, but when you said there's no projected surplus in 25, 26, and 26 and 27, and the projected surplus is how we've been funding our projects, how are we going to fund anything in these out years if what's projected to go out exceeds what we have coming in? assuming there's no grant money, because we don't have any right now, and maybe we can talk lobbyists at some other point, but separate issue. So I guess my question is, how are we going to pay for any of the above?
Well, and, to a point, that goes back to our budget discussions and the revenue enhancements.
Right.
Sometimes there are leftover funds from projects, the contingency, for instance, and that can help fund future projects down the road. But in general, as was said, they're not entirely funded coming up front, but we hope to have funding for them. But as we said, we've made cuts that will help in some way, but we're going to need revenue enhancements as well to fill the gaps along the way.
Yeah, so hope.
Hope is not a strategy.
Is not a strategy, right.
So that's why we've put together options for council's consideration as to what to pick and choose to provide additional funding.
If I could, too, maybe just add to that, please. And I think what I'm emphasizing is right now, so there's still 23 million in the CIP spread across. And while we are spending at a rate faster than we're replenishing, we're not going to be at zero in a year or 2 years. It's going to take some time to get to that point. And so I think we're calling out there is an issue. And what we're trying to do is fund those critical phases to keep critical projects moving. And then each year we come back to try to backfill and find construction funding to move those forward. And that's what we've been doing over time. And so it's been a bit of a game to move money around each year to keep things moving. But it does really mean in the near term not adding new things and being careful about what projects go forward and keeping our eye on the ball for the most critical safety or regulatory need projects, that those remain funded in the coming years.
I appreciate that, and I get it. I guess my concern is, I think one of the things we've done in the past is we've advanced projects through studies that have been shelved, and because we don't have the money. And I see a lot of these falling into that similar category where they would be moved forward for study, but we don't have the funding for that, and that's a concern. Question about the windows at the community center. You need an architect? I think you get a windows guy who specializes in older buildings. Do you need an architect for windows? Forgive my ignorance, but
Yeah, so a couple of things. We're a public agency. We got to go to bid to bring anybody in. I wish I could hire.
I get it going to bid.
So that means a design package that has to come together. And I think the uniqueness of that building is it's a locally designated historic structure. There were prior attempts to install windows in that facility. If you take a deep inspection, you may find a few vinyl windows that are installed, and that project was stopped. And those vinyl windows remain in a storage closet in the gymnasium today, and we have no solution for window replacement. And so what we are doing is we are bringing an architect to help us find a suitable window that can meet that historic character. This is likely going to have to go to Planning Commission so that we actually have a replacement solution. Whether or not we replace them all, we need to find something suitable. There are window manufacturers that can make windows in the style that we're looking for. We need both the style and the functionality because we have a lot of, well, I'll move on from that, but that's what we're really looking to do.
But if this goes out for RFP, and the RFP is, Art Deco building, unique characteristics, come out, take a look, and tell us what you can do for us, right? I guess I don't understand why you need an architect to tell you what you need when we sort of know what we need, and then two or three, four windows guys can tell us if they can meet what we need.
So we have to prepare plans and specifications. There has to be criteria that contractors can fairly bid on so that we get good bids, and then we have a contract that adheres them to those specifications. Otherwise, we're in fights, change orders, and lawsuits. And we have to have solid contract documents so that we can actually get what we're paying for. But there has to be basically a recipe that they can follow when they're bidding on it. And that's what the architect helps us do, is put together, what are these windows? What are they made out of? How is it going to be installed? If you look out there now, we have a lot of rotten wood. There's probably going to be other repairs that need to be done when those windows come out and new ones go in. So we have to think through everything that could potentially happen so that it's included in the contract documents.
And what's an architect going to cost? And you can't do any of that without an architect.
So architects specialize in this work, and they can help us work through the historic. There's documentation that needs to be done. We need to develop plans and specifications. We often rely on third-party experts to help supplement and advance these CIPs. Design often can be anywhere from 10 to 20% of any project, depending on complexity. In this case, it's going to have to go to Planning Commission, and we do need professional support to go through that process.
Okay. Appreciate that deep dive. A couple other quickies. With regard to the unfunded mandate for the dry well, our deadline is 2027. So we have this unfunded mandate, right?
That's correct.
And we think that's going to cost how much?
It could be upwards of $4 million. And so right now, there was a much more costly project originally planned at the Greenbelt, which is no longer happening. We had an initial assessment that looked at numerous dry wells to be installed east of Prospect that could have been in the order of magnitude of $8 million or more. Geosyntech, the consultant that Council awarded the contract for a couple months ago, we've been working with them on a refined plan that would greatly reduce that number down so we can get it to under about $4 million. By putting them potentially in South Park or Bicentennial, where we get really good infiltration because there's a lot of sand, and also trying to find ways that we can address the prior concerns that came up during the Greenbelt project of proximity to homes and things like that. So they are finalizing that assessment to determine whether or not what's the minimum amount of dry wells needed to address the volume of water that we're trying to treat. And the goal with that is that we potentially come to a Public Works Commission this summer before the grant application goes in July.
And the possibility of putting that on Herondo is not possible. I know we had talked about maybe a Herondo project and sharing costs with Redondo Beach and Torrance. Is that still in the?
I'm not sure if these will all potentially help the Herondo outfall, but we also have to look at where the storm drains come in and where we have enough room to fit. We'd still probably need about 13 of these. And we have limited real estate on Herondo. I mean, we have basically the parking lane on the north side west of Valley, but we also have to be proximate to the storm drain line so that we can have a diversion line that connects to these storm dry wells.
Thank you, sir. And I know we had several plans that have been shelved for the city yard. And several of those plans had addressed what lies below, which is the potential cleanup remediation. Is there any ballpark estimate based on what you know, what it would cost us just for the remediation before we even talk about construction?
So there were the most detailed studies that were done were related to the oil project that was there.
Right.
And I think there was some supplements when they did the corrective action plan, when the city subsequently advanced an additional project around 2017, 2018. Now, what I'll say is that work was done in coordination with a particular scope of work at that time. So to the extent that we can rely on all the findings from those may or may not be fully relevant, because it depends on our current needs to address operational requirements and what's the disturbance of the underground going to be. So our ultimate environmental assessment may yield different results.
No, I got it.
Based on it. So
Right.
at the time, back when they did the corrective action plan that was approved in 2019, 2020, I want to say they had some alternatives for addressing it. It was at least in the $2 to $3 million range, and it could be more. With that said, regulations have changed. There were
stringent.
additional requirements from LA County. And so that number is very, very rough and likely tied only to that program. And with the additional requirements and testing that's needed, it could very much change. And with inflation alone, those numbers are likely very different.
Okay. Thank you, sir. Appreciate it.
If I could follow up on the lawn bowling club. Really, at the time it came up during the city council meeting, you wanted a review of the facility. And during that time, they were going back and forth. We reviewed the minutes, and the clarification that was given was that city staff had the discretion to determine whether to send it to the council, to the Parks and Rec Commission or not, committee, excuse me. When we discussed it, because of the liability issues that were involved, the decision was made that my office would provide the legal concerns that we had, and I did provide information to you on that. So at this point in time, the decision was made not to take it back to Parks and Rec because of the liability issues that we need to work out with the current negotiations that we have. And so that's kind of the answer. It's not going back to the Parks and Rec Commission unless you tell us to. But I would strongly recommend that you review, and I can send it out again, the legal concern analysis that I gave you. So that's why we recommend that this not go to the commission at this time until we finalize the negotiations that are going on. Does that help?
Not really.
Okay.
The specific future agenda item was for Parks and Rec to take a look at the lawn bowling facility in terms of the lease and the maintenance and all those things.
Correct. And that,
This is not on our agenda tonight.
Yes.
So,
Okay.
Well,
But it
How
is
does
with
it
regard
relate?
to.
it is, but the because of the negotiations and the legal concerns surrounding that, that's why it's not going back to Parks and Rec Commission until that's been finalized.
But they could have a public discussion in terms of what the status is of the current arrangement with the lawn bowling facility, the management of, the maintenance of, and any respective covenants that may or may not apply. And I don't know how, again, that motion that was
As
approved
I-
has been changed.
The minutes reflected that you gave city staff the discretion to determine whether they needed to go to the committee. We looked at that. And at that time, the decision was made that it needed to come for my review,
Okay, I won't-
legal
I won't
review,
delay-
because
I
of
won't
the,
delay this, but I'll go back and review the minutes. But I just looked at the motion that I made, and it was pretty clear.
we're working to get there, Councilmember.
Okay.
Mr. Mayor. Mr. Mayor, may I comment on this?
I mean, again, lawn bowling,
I'm just a very quick comment, and it's pertinent to the question at hand. Since the lawn bowling roof is on our CIP list, and we need to determine whether or not we're going to even fix the roof, I think it's urgent that it needs to be fixed. And so at what extent can we comment and discuss the fixing of the roof only? Not necessarily, well, I guess that leads to the question of who's going to pay for it, but what the important part is it's on a CIP list, and the roof needs to be fixed. And so how do we adjust that with the whole picture? How do we approach the repair of the roof tonight regarding that CIP? Not the lease, not the other business.
correct.
Just
So,
that.
so it's kind of part of that. My recommendation was to not discuss the roof tonight because we're still under negotiations. And so, once again, I just give legal recommendations. There's a lot of, there are some issues involved, and so if you get into a deep discussion on that, you're going down a path that is not
so knowing this is active
recommended.
negotiations, I assume we should probably schedule a closed session to get up to date on it. And I know the memo was sent out.
correct.
If we have questions on it, we should probably discuss it. And, I mean, $130,000 of taxpayer funds going to an entity that we don't know whose responsibility it is to maintain whatever.
Correct.
So-
That's why it's
so
not,
maybe we
it's
should
not,
have a
right.
closed session coming
Yes.
up on that.
Yes, that is recommended,
That's
yes.
acceptable, yeah.
But
Okay. And will that come back to us soon, or?
Well, that can be at the next, we'll put it on the next meeting.
Oh, okay. All right. Sounds good.
questions to my right?
I'll
you.
I'll take some. Well, unless you want to go first.
You go first.
All right. Well, okay. I was going to ask something about the lawn bowling. We can decide to not include it and take it off. It only appeared on CIP tonight. It never was there before. So it's now here, I assume, because it needs to be done. So last year, we didn't think it needed to be done. Is that what the issue is with this? Or
Was this presented to the commission?
This full package tonight of all the projects was presented to the commission at the joint meeting on May 5.
So that's when it was first discussed.
So when we go back a year ago, we had no idea the roof needed to be done, and now it's here on the CIP because it needs to be done.
So that's not completely accurate. So this year, we're recommending it. Each year, we make careful choices about what has to go forward. Pretty much everything that's on our CIP is pretty much an urgent project for the most part. And so we have to be selective about what can get added based on capacity and funding availability. I think it's something that's been on our radar for a while. We received a fair amount of complaints about that facility. It does remain a city facility. And this year, we are recommending that that roof will need to be replaced.
Yeah, okay. I mean, so it wasn't on an unfunded project last year.
No.
So part of the question I have is why suddenly things like this come up. You would think that if something needs to be done like a roof, it would be, in at least an unfunded category or for something in the future. So, but I guess I had some questions. I guess we're going to delay all that because of the city attorney's recommendation, and we can take it up, I guess, in closed session on that. And since there was a mention of the windows, I'll just bring that up, that when we go out to bid on that, we're not required to specify that they are kind, like, and quality of landmark or historical significance. We could opt for vinyl windows if we brought it cheaper. Is that correct? Or is there some requirement that we can't do that?
No. And my understanding was there was an attempt to install vinyl windows, which was stopped because it did not adhere to the historic designation. So what our plan is to get a window that is suitable in look and material and bring that to Planning Commission for consideration before it goes to bid so that we can specify how that window would look and what it's made out of.
Okay, so there are no current vinyl windows there.
There actually are a few. And so there was an attempt to replace all these windows. It may have been about a decade ago. I don't have the exact year. And I think they were successful in installing a handful of them, but that project was stopped. Couldn't tell you the story of exactly how it stopped, but all I know is it stopped, and there's still windows, brand new windows sitting that we were not able to put in. And so that project has halted, and what we are trying to do is pick this back up. It's been on a list for a very long time to try to make a more successful attempt at finding something suitable for that facility so that we can solve the window issue.
I mean, I guess maybe we can find ways to make it done less expensively. It's my understanding with the Historical Resources Code, if vinyl windows are already there, we can replace them with vinyl. The issue is if vinyl windows are not there at all, they may have to be like, kind, and quality of the original. So I just thought I'd throw that in for the Windows thing. So on the roofing of the Civic Center, that's a $410,000 repair, is that right?
That's correct.
410. I guess it's similar to the lawn bowling. Was that on the books last year, or is this a new repair that we just realized we need, or what? How is that coming to light?
This is a new recommended project for the upcoming fiscal year. Our team has had ongoing problems with leaks in the building. We've made various attempts to patch and repair, but it's due for a full overlay. We did infrared sensor assessment on the roof so that we could evaluate where the leaks are coming in. There is underlying repairs that need to be done and then an overlay on both roofs. But this is to address continuous water intrusion issues we're having in both buildings.
Okay, so similar to the lawn bowling roof, a year ago, we didn't have any idea that this was even going to happen, and that therefore it wasn't on any unfunded list, or it was just not there, right?
There was no proposal last year. This is a new project, that's correct.
Okay. With regards to the downtown lighting, so we're moving that to unfunded, but you stated that we're going to come up with, I think, $29,000 worth of minimal implementation of lighting there, right?
That's correct. We're looking to move it to defunded, which would free up about $140,000, and in place of it, we're proposing to replace it with 2 projects at about $29,000.
Okay, and so I don't see 621, that's the CIP, on the list anywhere, but I assume it's going to reappear for that little bit of work that's going to be done. Is that right? Or did I miss it?
I'm sorry, if you could clarify your question. For downtown lighting?
So the $29,000 worth of lighting that we're going to do, the palm trees and the,
Yeah.
is that still considered part of CIP 621?
No, we're taking it off the books. So what we're proposing to do is eliminate that project and replace it with 2 lower cost supplemental budget requests that would advance as basically maintenance projects. It would be the similar strategy that we used for the 14th Street restroom this year.
Okay, and it sits in unfunded, and in the future, we might be able to fund it again then. Is that right? That's the idea of having it unfunded?
That way it lives on the unfunded list, and should council decide to revisit any of those projects in the unfunded list, those could always be considered in a future year.
Okay. And no survey or study's been done regarding it yet?
Could I clarify your question about what type of survey?
We haven't spent any funds yet on design or,
The only thing that we've done is we've purchased 3 test lights. These are LED retrofits with existing maintenance budget so that we can try some samples so that we can better understand the color tones.
okay. Thank you very much, and I appreciate, all the work that you did to put this together. I think that year after year, I think we're getting a little more clear idea of where our budget is. So I do see an improvement in presentation, and I really do appreciate that quite a bit. Thank you.
Thank you.
Mr. Mayor.
Rob?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Joe, thank you for this report. This is so complicated, and there's so much here, and so many different aspects of everything. And I apologize for bringing this up again, but I wasn't even going to talk about it until it came up tonight, about the windows on the community center. I fully understand the idea that we want to get the right windows that match the building, and that building has been improved slightly over the years and painted and fixed up and everything, and it's beautiful. We don't want to just throw some junk on there. But we are in a crisis financially, and you brought up the fact that we do have some vinyl windows, and some of them had already been installed. Would it make sense at all to go ahead and install the other ones that we have, which we don't have to pay for materials because we already have them? I'm very familiar with the installation of vinyl windows, replacement windows. They fit inside the frame. They're relatively simple and therefore inexpensive to install. So would it make sense to install the vinyl windows that we have, regardless of the fact that they're really not the right thing we should do, but we already have them, and it's very drafty and cold in those rooms, I get it, but just let's go ahead and use them for the time being so that there's some windows that are somewhat airtight for the next year or so until funds and windows and planning and et cetera can be perfected. So just because it seems a shame to let brand new windows sit in a closet someplace and have people shivering while they're in a room with louver windows. That make sense at all? And wouldn't the cost be so low for that it would be reasonable to just do that, put a Band-Aid on it for now? I'm just asking.
So I don't believe there's any more than a handful of these available, and I don't know if they meet the size requirements for the ones that we really need to replace. They're all really bad. And the ones that are in really poor condition are in all shapes and sizes, and so may not address the current issue. I don't know what type of local approval we would have to get to do an interim swap, but largely it would not solve the problem. We get numerous work orders for windows that are jammed, slats that fall out, other security issues that happen in that building. And so I'd say the issue is growing and broad across the facility.
I'm not suggesting that we don't need to do a full window replacement with the right windows. Absolutely not.
Sure.
I'm only saying that as a temporary solution, like you said, slats falling out of them. Now, they're louver windows, essentially. Slats are falling out, and the windows don't stay open and closed, and so on. I understand that. I used to have many meetings in those rooms, and it needs fixing. Sure. Also, I know that on vinyl windows, replacement windows, they're made for the opening, or you have a standard size opening, and it works. But one way or another, you can put those windows in relatively simple. So I'm only suggesting that as a temporary stopgap work that could be done relatively cheap, that would at least button up the building a little bit for the time being, and then we would have, time to work on the rest of the project. Right. Is it worth looking at?
Councilor, I'll get with the director and we'll take a look at them.
I mean, at least
We'll
explore
look
the
at 'em.
idea.
It's worth a look.
Okay.
Could I just add one thing regarding the windows, if I may, Mr.
Sure.
Mayor? It's a, can you say it's a landmark? If you have a landmark, it requires a lot of approvals to replace existing windows with aluminum. Isn't that part of the problem of being able to do it? It's not as easy as just, you can't do that to a landmark. You can't take vinyl windows and stick them in there when they weren't there to begin with. So that's why I was suggesting those ones that are existing that are aluminum, you could replace them because they're already there. But as far as replacing original with aluminum, that creates special issues because it's a landmark.
What aluminum? The current windows?
Vinyl, I'm sorry, vinyl.
Right.
I'm talking about you can't, in a landmark, you can't replace the original windows with vinyl.
And that's part of what we'll look at.
So isn't that the reason it hasn't been done?
That's correct. It was stopped.
Right.
There was a project that put vinyl in to replace the wood with the vinyl, and my understanding is that project was stopped because it lacked the approval. And so to put in even temporary, we will have to explore what that would take to do it on a temporary basis.
We'll take a look for the temporary replacement.
I'm sorry for interrupting, but.
No, that's okay. I think the issue is kind of already resolved, so sorry for bringing it up again. The work at Fort, lots of fun. CIP 610, the wall and the gate. I'm pretty familiar with Fort, lots of fun, and the little school that's next to it. Is that work absolutely urgent? I mean, is the wall falling down, and does it present a real serious hazard to health and safety? Pardon me.
It's been on our watch list for a few years, but the wall's leaning. So what we'd like to do, or our recommendation, is to replace it before it fails. I don't think there's any potential of imminent collapse, but that could potentially change. I think the issue is that when that retaining wall was built, there was zero drainage installed, and so there's no drain holes in that wall, and so that water pressure is just pushing on that wall.
Mm-hmm. I remember about 100 years ago, I was on the Public Works Commission, and there was a tree there that was pushing the wall out onto the sidewalk. And I think subsequently they removed the tree, which is too bad, but it's gone already. And I looked at that wall quite a long time ago. Same wall that's there still, right? Mm-hmm. And I think most of the failure is that they drilled holes in the top of it for poles for fencing. And if you can see that the wall is cracked everywhere, there's a fence post. So I know it's in trouble, but that was about 16 or 18 years ago, and so it's still standing. So in view of our current financial situation, does it make sense to take that one off the list temporarily too? And save the money? Or is there not?
Well, as someone who spends a lot of time there, the wall is definitely leaning. That fence is termited and rotted out and like barely latches. You might lose a finger or two trying to get in and out of there. So, I mean.
I just have a question.
Yeah.
Thank you.
So we've had it on the list for a few years, and we've been pushing it out because we haven't been able to get to it as a number of priorities. Our recommendation would be to address it before it fails. And it's really unpredictable to say when that's going to happen. We continue to monitor it. I don't see substantial shifts in the condition of that wall, but that could change with heavy rainfalls. We just really can't predict.
Because of the drain, okay. Yeah. All right, thank you for that. The Real Crime Center, CIP 68, 68. We have considerable amount of money that was granted for that. Is there any cost to the city on that?
No, it's all grant funds.
It's all fund?
Yep.
Yeah, okay, all right. That's all my questions, thank you. Just one more. Is our CIP list, in your opinion, basically we've eliminated everything that really we could wait on, and so there is let's say a degree of urgency on each of the CIPs that we have on this list now, and that maybe they're not from top to bottom, this is the most urgent, second urgent, third urgent, and so on. But would you say, generally speaking, that all the work you've done is to basically narrow this down to the most important, most urgent ones that we really can't let go any longer? Is that fair to say?
Yes, I think we've been whittling it down the last couple of years and trying to prioritize the hottest things. I mean, I think where there might still be some discretion are some of the grant-funded projects, which, it's a challenge of things like the PCH Aviation Mobility Project, which has been on the books for a very long time. That's going to be a function of, while it's paid from outside funds, it will be an investment of staff time. And so that one is, while it's been on the books a long time, may not have urgent need other than this is the window of opportunity to advance it. And I think that's the unique thing with it. If we do desire to continue that project and build off what was done 12 years ago, then it would make sense to continue with it. And that's just one example.
Okay, great. Thank you so much for your work. I appreciate it.
Thank you.
I saw Joe out there scouting the PCH mobility project as I high-fived him crossing PCH the other day. LED feedback. Have we gotten feedback from businesses? Clearly we saw them installing the two more today, but have we kind of prodded the neighborhood businesses to kind of see? I know Sosta's right there, Stecca, sorry, Hook and Plow, and a few other restaurants that work at night, Rockefeller, things like that. Are they getting good feedback? We ordered two more, so I'm excited about the prospect.
When we installed the first one, it's been out there for a few weeks, I went and I talked to the business owners or their manager at the time and gave my card, expressed interest in having them contact me with any feedback. I've not received any feedback from them, which could be a good sign that it's not too bright, for example. One resident did walk the corridor, talk to some folks out there and give me feedback that it seemed that the one in front of Stecca was a little bright versus the other one, just in the color tone, more of a white light versus the soft yellow. And so we did the two new ones that we just installed, the one on the corner of Cypress and in front of Creme de la Croûte, are softer color tones. So right as of today, and I actually did speak with folks at Creme de la Croûte and Rockefeller today, gave them our information to get feedback, because tonight will be the first night that they're all live, and so we can definitely continue to follow up. But so far, nothing really on the first one. We'll see how these other two go.
Okay. Why did we bid the playground equipment first, and then now we're doing the bid for the installer? I assume is there any efficiencies in kind of doing one company or cost savings, or is it truly a big cost difference?
It was more of a procurement requirement. We worked with legal to come up with the most efficient method that we could. Typically, we can't do design build on a very small project, and this was definitely under that threshold for doing that type of treatment. The fabricators do the design, so we're able to get a design and the equipment from the fabricator through a co-op agreement. And we want to make sure that we have the equipment in hand when we bid it out, before we bid it out, so that when we bring a contractor on, we're ready to go to furnish the equipment. So we're trying to do it as efficiently as we can. I'm hoping to bring a contract award. It might not be the next meeting, it's either the next meeting or the following. But we're also trying to schedule when that work would be done. So we're considering whether we'll push off the award, because we don't want to be doing the playground installation right in the summer when all the programs are out there. And we're looking at how to schedule that start mid to late August when schools go back.
Okay. I'm kind of a GIS nerd. I enjoy the maps of the repaving that you guys do. Is that something you're also going to do for the slurry seals as well? Kind of the streets where it will be refreshed. I know it'll be noticed and everything, but it's nice looking at the project maps and kind of seeing where the projects are going to go.
Okay. Which maps are GIS maps?
So the GIS maps for the road repaving, the CIP ones, but if you actually look at the project maps, they'll show, for this closeout one, Valley Drive from Pierre to the end of the city, and all the other ones, Clark Field, the repaving there, that I don't know if it did take place. I think that one got pulled back.
We can see if we can supplement information in there. I know in this packet we show detailed maps of the segments. We could try to see if we can amend that.
If there ever was a new revenue stream, would you recommend bonding a larger chunk to knock out $10 to $15 million worth of road repaving? And then, of course, we'd be paying for that over 10, 15 years. Is there a benefit to kind of one-time injection of a lot of funds to bring the majority of the PCI up? Or is it kind of best practices just to keep that $3, $4 million a year?
It's definitely a possibility. I think we want to review the standards and where each road lies, and best bang for the buck. And of course, it would be council's decision to put that up against other priorities on the CIP list.
Right. The other thing too is, we have to worry about utility coordination. And then once you get to a very, very large project, it also becomes a little bit harder to manage. And so I know we definitely feel the construction in the city when it happens. And so the next project's gonna be 2.5 miles of road. I think the last one we did was 2 miles, and that's quite a bit of segments through the city. So I think also managing the scale and the location would have to be a consideration too, but there's always potential.
Undergrounding districts, if all the neighbors get jealous of the power lines coming down and communities band together and start getting petitions going, is that going to be a massive draw on staff time, or does the consultant handle most of the coordination? I know the staff is still working. I mean, I sent you guys an email today about one of the issues. Yeah. So I know that you're still working through the projects, but I didn't know if undergrounding kind of picks up some steam coming up, if that would be a big deterrent.
It's a heavy lift.
Okay. I'm going to still bring some for you. So those are all of my questions. We will open up to public comment. Thanks again, Joe.
I did not receive any speaker cards. We do have one virtual hand. Elaine, your 3 minutes will start when you begin speaking.
Hello?
Go ahead.
Hey, evening council, staff. Obviously, I'm tuning in remotely tonight. I'm looking at the audience, and it looks like there's about 6 people in the room, about 9 online. It's obviously quiet this evening, but we all know that the moment discussions of increasing fees, reservation prices, raising revenue in any way occurs, this room fills up with people bitching about having to pay for things. Excuse my French, Dean, I apologize. The reality is most residents have no idea how much fiscal trouble this city is actually in. Just this week, I had a neighbor approach me about helping her contact Public Works about a minor infrastructure project on our street where she's getting localized flooding in front of her house. And I didn't have the heart to tell her the brutal truth that she is wasting her time because the city will not have the resources to help her. Our capital improvement plan that, frankly, even I, as someone who pays attention, did not understand the depth of trouble that we are in. We are staring down enormous infrastructure needs, yet we have no plan to raise revenue. I sat through these meetings before, and I've even come up and proposed what I think are reasonable ways to make money. like strategically adding more parking spots to raise ongoing revenue. And even that low-hanging fruit seems to get hummed and hawed at by council, who appears more interested in preserving their seats on council than making the difficult decisions of how we're going to raise money. It is not a matter of whether my idea is going to be implemented to raise money. We need to be implementing, it seems, all of the ideas that were proposed for raising money at the meeting earlier this week. We have fallen into the trap. This town wants first-class amenities, but they want to reject every tool we have required to raise those funds. It is not going to be the case that we can just raise these funds off of visitors to our city anymore. It is the reality that we, as the citizens of Hermosa, are going to have to step up and find ways to pay out of our pockets for these improvement projects. We love to complain about increased fees, but we complain even louder when our streets are flooding, our assets are falling into disrepair, but disrepair isn't free. We're deferring maintenance. It's not saving us money. It's going to cost us even more money in the long run. And we're getting into the same problem locally that we are nationally. We are kicking the can down the road on these expensive projects that are just going to become the problem of my generation 20 years from now, when everyone on this council is no longer with us. So it's time to start making these difficult decisions about how we are going to raise money. It is not some ideas. It is all of the ideas that were presented last week. And $500,000 for a windmill, by the way, is absolutely insane.
Next speaker. David.
Good evening, David Grathan, Public Works Commission. I just wanted to clarify something for the public. I think all the council members understand. When Councilmember Jackson said something effective, we're not getting any more money, and I'm not being critical, but I think that was in reference to when we have a budget, when we don't have a budget surplus in the general fund, then we cannot replenish the CIP fund and put that and have those funds. And there's a scenario where we didn't do that this year, as I understand it. And so that could continue if we don't continue to work on our budget. But I wanted to emphasize that it doesn't go to zero, because if you look at the budget, you'll see there are several different funding sources. At the top, there's a whole slew of restricted funds. And that's probably where we got the bulk of that roughly 4.7 million number that was added. And I think that Director San Clemente may have mentioned that those funds are, I don't know if unreliable, or at least they're variable and make it hard to plan for. And maybe if we don't, and I think some of these we have to get, work to get these funds. So there is a certain amount of uncertainty associated with those. And I'll just make an observation that it looks like a lot of these restricted funds tend to be in the way of the basics, like paving, and we have the sewer assessment, things like Measure W helps with stormwater. And then I'll make yet another observation that the fact that those are the types of funds that we tend to get may help do some of the prioritization for us. Thank you.
Anyone else?
Next, we have J.A. Your 3 minutes will begin when you start speaking.
Yeah, I don't know why it says that. Anyways, this is Kent Allen. Listen, I know this is about capital improvement, but I also have to point out that there's a general mindset. There's certain people on the council who are simply incompetent on talking about capital improvement projects. And I'll go back to a year ago when Councilmember Jackson asked that he was demanding that the assistant city manager position, be reinstated. And I think his exact words was, "This position is absolutely necessary. The city will suffer without this position. This position is critical." And so I'd like to ask Jackson, I know you won't answer, but we spent over $1.5 million on assistant city manager who I don't know who did I don't know what she did. I don't even know her name. But this mindset, here's a guy who's asking, is a slurry coat less than full pavement? I mean, just an absolute no knowledge of what he is talking about. And yet we have to listen here as a public. I mean, he should just keep his mouth shut. And I'm going to listen to, I'm just so sorry. But Jackson, let me ask you this. Are you going to stand by your statement that this assistant city manager is absolutely necessary and the city will suffer without this position? Oh my God. It's just.
Can you talk, is this anything else about the CIP? We understand your point on the budget.
Yeah, okay, Mike, you know what? When I want your opinion, I'll ask it. Thank you.
Anyone else for public comment?
I do not have any more virtual hands raised.
All right, we'll close public comment. I did have one more question that I remembered. I know we've had a lot of talk about updating the CIP status reports. Has there been any more movement on that to kind of show original budgets and status updates and color coding? I know that, Ray, you've talked about that quite a bit to get a little more information out of those.
I mean, I think we've done minor changes over time, and I think we provide quite a bit of information in those sheets. I think one challenge with things like providing original budget, I'll always challenge that and say, well, what was the original scope that went with it? Because while projects get initiated, we have projects that have been on the books for 10 years. There might be a budget that was tied to a totally different scope than what we're advancing now. And so we try to pack a lot into those status sheets. We provide very detailed updates. We now provide the estimated schedule every month. That was never originally included in the status sheet. And I think that visual helps show where things are and where they fall in line. And so I'd say that's probably been the most major update that we put in it. But we're always open for input. But I would also ask, too, if there's things we add as a way to remove things that are on there that might be less important to the public as they look at the projects.
Perfect. Yeah. I can kick off some basic thoughts on that. And ever since I've been on council, I've never understood, especially just roads, focusing on roads. Roads have a lifespan. We know we have about 40 miles of roads in town. Take that lifespan, divide it by miles of roads, multiply it by price per mile of road, and that's what we should be saving up every year. But as we've discussed, we have been relying on the vacancy savings and the budget overages and everything else to pave roads, and I never understood why that is. So I think your report showed that. I think, as you said, $3.1 million a year annually is what we need to focus on. Simple math equation, and that's the most basic thing that we can do. And again, I applaud you for what you have done, because we have done, I think, over 7 miles of roads the last few years, about 20% of our overall roads. But that's just one piece of the pie. And we talked about parks, we got the water infiltration stuff and everything else. So we do have a big push and the need, and again, hopefully the public does listen and we have revenue needs in the future. But it's we need to really have some sustainable funding moving forward. Mayor Pro Tem.
Thank you. Joe, thanks for the report. I know we have projects set up for this fiscal year. I saw your CIP budget. So if we don't get any of those revenue enhancements passed, whether it's through vote, what will the budget for 27, 28 look like on CIPs if we don't get an influx of several $1 million? What will happen to the plan for the following year?
It would really just be limited to the restricted fund sources that we get. And so those could change year to year. I mean, this year, I think it was only about 4.7 million in new funds, and those are all restricted fund sources. So I'd have to defer to our administrative service director and what the forecast would be for those, whether they're higher or lower in the following year. But I think what it would mean is that we'd have to probably look at the projects more closely and look at whether we have to do fund swaps and consider deferring other projects or pushing other things out and advancing so that we can move money around to advance more critical phases of the most high priority projects. So it would be tougher decisions for sure.
So you'd say it's a critical point, this and next year?
In the coming few years. So I think critical for a few projects to keep moving forward. I think maybe the 5 or so that I highlighted, that our recommendation is to emphasize moving them through the various phases to keep them moving forward. towards where they need to go, and which many of these can take more than a year to happen. You know, the yard is a multi-year effort, whereas the others can easily take a year or two to get through design and permitting and whatever. And so I think each year will get increasingly harder. I don't know if I think I'm answering your question.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you.
Dean?
Well, just to clarify something that my colleague just inquired about, this budget presented to us tonight is based on existing revenue streams, correct?
Correct. This is based on our projections for what's available for next year. Yes.
And as I understand it, the role of city staff and our government is to continue to provide budgets based on existing revenue streams. So the budget that comes up next year will be based on the existing revenue streams. So it's, I don't know, it's kind of unrealistic to try to signify that, well, we get more revenue streams so that we can do existing budget. The existing budget is based on existing revenue streams, and when we get new revenue streams, then future budgets can be revised. And I just thought I'd make that point and understand if we're all clear on the way these budgets are put together.
Councilmember, when you're talking about existing revenue streams, yes, but if that revenue stream shrinks, what I think Director Sancomende is saying is that the ability to complete projects shrinks as well. And
Sure.
so what you're looking at, to answer Mayor Pro Tem Keegan's point, is that if we have less dollars, then it's going to be hard choices for council to make regarding which projects go forward and which don't. You know, we've got however many projects listed here. That would shrink significantly if we don't have additional dollars coming in. So it would be deferred and put on the unfunded list for the future. But that doesn't mean the needs for those projects goes away, or
Right.
the serious conditions that we're trying to correct go away.
Yeah, okay. I just want to be clear on that. I mean, for example, you know, we continue to budget, what is it? $600,000 for lifeguard fees that we pay for our lifeguard services, but we don't know what's going to happen in the future if that contract gets renegotiated. Maybe we won't be paying anything if we fight hard enough and insist that we shouldn't be paying for lifeguard services in the future. That's going to be extra revenue that comes back into the budget for future budgets.
The lifeguard services, Councilmembers, are paid for along with the beach maintenance services by a split of the Lost Sea funds, and that's about $350,000 and roughly.
Right.
And so $350,000 pays for lifeguard and beach maintenance services. We are in negotiations right now with the county. We're in negotiations with County Fire, which oversees the lifeguards right now with them. Separate negotiations will be taking place with Beaches and Harbors, Department of Beaches and Harbors regarding beach maintenance. So yes, it is unknown what future costs might be, but we're working hard to keep those down through the negotiations.
But that contract ends early next year, in the February or March, right? So
It does. We've already been
Right.
given a termination notice.
So if we were to not have that expense anymore, that would bring $350,000 more into our revenue stream because we would not be expending that money anymore if we were to negotiate or if we were to not pay for lifeguard services anymore. That's just an example of how the revenue streams change from year to year. And, you know, this budget is for current and existing revenue streams.
Sure.
Yeah.
I'm not sure it's entirely realistic to think that we're going to pay zero for.
Oh, well, I think we should, but.
Well, should and what we will.
If you think we're only going to pay 350, then that's not going to happen either. So, you know, right?
We'll see.
Okay. Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Rob, you have anything? Any thoughts?
No motion.
Ray?
Just a couple thoughts. You know, I think the reality for these CIPs is similar to what we discussed the other day with police and with city management with regard to our vehicles. I think for the next couple of years until we get on solid financial footing, it's going to be patchwork, repairs, and Band-Aids. While we make the best of these scarce resources that we have and limited funding. I mean, that's just the reality of where we are. And I think that means focusing on projects that are truly critical, especially those tied to public safety, like the 25th Street in Ardmore, lighting upgrades, and other infrastructure street needs that require immediate attention. I think anything that requires additional studies but has no identifiable funding mechanism or realistic path forward should be put on hold for now. Again, I'm not minimizing the importance of those projects, but we have a history of studying and shelving because we don't have the resources to move forward. We don't have the luxury of spending dollars on projects we can't afford to build right now. And I think our priority should be taking care of what we have, addressing those immediate safety concerns, and we have to be honest with the community about what we can realistically accomplish with our finite resources while we seek the path forward. That's all I've got, Mr. Mayor. Thank you.
Thank you. Rob?
Mr. Mayor, I move that we receive and file the fiscal year 2026-27 Capital Improvement Program Study Session Report.
I'll second.
Before we take a vote on this, again, want to thank your team for your hard work this past few years. I think Ray really teed it up on how much you have done in Back to Basics. Again, almost a fifth of our roads got repaved. It's been impressive, but we just need to keep pushing forward. Hopefully we can streamline the efficiencies, and keep moving the ball forward. So thank you. Please echo the sentiment to your team. I know you guys are all busy.
Appreciate it.
Doing good work. Any other comments? All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Abstain?
Motion passes 5-0.
All right. All right, so that is it for this evening. This meeting adjourns to Tuesday, June 9th at 4 p.m. in council chambers for Public Works Commission and Civil Service Board applicant interviews. The regular city council meeting will follow with closed session at 5 p.m. and open session at 6 p.m. Thank you and good night.
Love is a lesson that doesn't end. It knows no conditions, so you better buckle in. Love keeps you on your toes. It never stops, only grows. Love isn't easy, it's a commitment, especially when they're being their most resistant. Love is finding the right seat so you can take a breath, but remember, Love isn't lax, it always double checks. Check that your kids are in the right seat at nhtsa.gov/the right seat.
Hear that? That's the sound of your life. Perfectly imperfect. But every time you drive after drinking, the music gets drowned out. Your life sounds pretty great. Don't let a buzz ruin it. Buzzed driving is drunk driving. Don't drive buzzed.
Hey, boss. Okay?
Yeah, I'm good.
You sure?
I said I'm fine.
Since I was little, it was only like me and my parents. You think you created family out of characters? Yeah, of course. I'm gonna take that and make it into a song.
Me the babe, see you in the morning with the frosted Superman, but it wasn't on it, and we lost it. In my head, in my head, in my head. Where you at on the way? In my head, in my head, in my head.
Hey, son.
Hey, Pop.
You can talk to me.
It's been really, really hard for me.
The bravest person I know is my daughter, Cynthia.
My friend Sean, and he was in the Air Force.
One of the bravest things he ever did wasn't when he first enlisted, it was when he found his first support group.
It was when he asked to move in with me and my mom.
I felt like I was lost, and you gave me a place to stay.
She went on foreign soil. She went to war. But the bravest thing she did is when she asked for help.
Eyes forward. Don't drive distracted.